which is a documentary from 2019, but it couldn't be more pertinent today. And I'm joined by the producer and director of the documentary, Janice Engel, the director, and Carlisle Vanerdervoort. And can I call you Car? Or do I know you very well enough to do that? Who's also the producer. I'm here because I found Molly Ivins to be a great spur. I never was interested in American politics until I read her book, and seeing this documentary made me want to vote harder and with more surety. And also it's a great laugh as well. So it's a film that's not just about politics. It's also about a great American writer, a great writer. So Janice and Cara, I just wanted to ask you, of all of the documentaries you could have made in the world, why this one?
Because nothing had been done on Molly Ivins. And that was kind of amazing at the time. And also, like yourself, I did not know who she was. So this was a no-brainer for me, because as soon as I jumped on board, it was a story. She was a person that needed to be shared, to be put out there, because she is so relevant, so relevant.
Cara, do you think that this documentary can make a difference, Molly Ivins coming to life again?
Absolutely. I mean, when it finally opened, because we were in Sundance and then we were in South by Southwest, and then in August, the end of August of 2019, we opened nationally because we'd had a distributor in the States. How did I just like totally blanked out. Magnolia. Sorry guys, if anybody from Magnolia is hearing this. Magnolia picked us up. And when we opened in the States, it was amazing. What was happening was, because we were in Houston, my hometown, for a month at the movie theaters, people were getting in touch with me and saying, I've seen it 2 times, I've seen it 3 times. First I saw it for myself, then I saw it for my kids, then I brought my grandchildren. And, you know, I want them to know who Molly was. I want them to think about what the issues are that she was writing about back then that we are now still dealing with. And we are dealing with those very issues to this very day, the day before the U.S. presidential elections and down ballot elections. Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, Molly Ivins did have she'd had bestseller, well, at least one bestseller on the New York Times list. She was also a syndicated columnist for about, 300 to 400 different newspapers in her heyday.
400 at the most. She had, I think, out of her 7 books, I think at least 3 were New York Times bestseller.
Because I was given the first one, which is such a great title. Molly Ivins can't say that, can she? I mean,
do you know how that came about?
No, tell me.
So when Molly was at one of the newspaper, I think it was the Dallas Times Herald in Dallas, she came back from working at the New York Times. Her newspaper actually took out billboards all around the Dallas-Fort Worth area, because she was a columnist that she would get so much love and hate mail. And they used it to up people buying the newspaper. And they did billboards that all around Texas that said, Molly Ivins can't say that, can she?
Obviously she did. Now, did either of you know, there was, I think it was 2010, 2 sisters wrote a play.
Yeah.
What was it? Red Hot. I knew I was going to blank on this.
Red Hot Patriot, the kick-ass wit of Molly Ivins. And that is what brought Molly Ivins to my attention. James Egan, our 3rd producing partner, wanted to make a film with me, a doc, for a while. And he called me up in May of 2012 and said, you need to go see this play at the Geffen Playhouse. This is in Los Angeles. It's called Red Hot Patriot, the kick-ass wit of Molly Ivins. And I said, why? And he said, because I had to last week. And I said, why is that? He goes, well, I know the playwrights. And he goes, you have to go see it. That's all I'm going to tell you about it. But the carrot was, he says, and it stars Kathleen Turner. It's a 1-woman show. And I said, okay. So I went and I bought a ticket, and I sat, that day, and I sat 3rd row off center, and I was floored. I was knocked out. It was hilarious. Not only was it hilarious, Molly's humor, Kathleen playing her, embodied her, but Molly, it was multimedia. They had clips on it. And I was like, oh, I know this person. How come, I mean, James and I would say, we always prided ourselves. He was a political activist. He didn't know about her either. Both of us didn't. And because we both grew up, he in Baltimore, me in New York, we lived in LA. She wasn't on our radar. I had seen her on a late night, and I had heard that she had called Bush Shrub the little bush, but that was, which I thought was funny, but that was about it. So, you know, both of us had this, like, if we don't know who she is, who else doesn't know who she is? And so we met with the playwrights, with one of the sisters who was out here in Los Angeles, and they connected us to Molly's chief of staff, Betsy Moon, the gatekeeper. She opened the doors. You know, she IMDb'd us because she made a point of time. By the way, I IMDb'd y'all. And said, okay, they're for real, they have credits. And so she put us in touch with Molly Ivins in State, which was the Texas Observer and the ACLU. Well, all these machinations were going on. James and I, you know, we're, as our third producing partner, the Texan, I wonder who that is, as you all can tell. She calls us carpetbaggers. And she's right. Car, take it away. You tell what we did.
So I've known Janice and James at that point for 25 years. And I'd been in the film business in my 20s, but it wasn't the industry for me. And I left it and then left New York, moved to LA and learned the PR trade. And over one reason or another, come to know Janice and James. And so I'd moved back to Houston, living my life in Houston, and they call me up one day and they go, blah, blah, blah. We've got this film project and you have 48 hours to say yes. And so they gang pressed me and I knew who Molly was. So I called them back the next day and I said, I'm totally in on this project. I really want to do this. This sounds like a lot of fun. And I wanted to do it because I, as a proud Texan, you know, most Texans are proud of being Texan. I mean, once people ask us, where are you from? Texans typically go, Texas, before they say the US. And so I wanted to make a film about Molly, who I thought was fantastic, although I'd never seen her live when she would come to Houston and do readings. The other thing was, my secret agenda was I was really sick of my liberal West Coast friends giving me a bunch of grief about living back in Texas. And I thought, they don't know anything about Texas. And this is going to be a great education for them.
Which it was.
That's how it came to be.
It was. She shamed me. She shamed me.
I love the shorthand about your Carlisle. I said, we needed somebody that spoke Texans.
Oh, they definitely needed somebody that spoke Texan, and they also needed somebody who knew how to talk to the oil and gas crowd in asking for money. Because I have a similar story to Molly. We went to the same private school for 12 years. We grew up in oil and gas families. We went to debutante parties. So we have very similar stories, just a number of decades apart. And so not that many actually, decades.
Yeah, like, can we just say a decade and a half?
Have to be precise.
So anyway, when they called, it was like, okay, I've got something to really contribute to this because yeah, the carpetbaggers are not going to be able to chat people up in the oil and gas business for money the way I might be able to.
I think you need to give a workshop in that. I was thinking, how does that work? I'd love to know. Now this film took, now Carl, you said that a documentary generally takes between 7 and 10 years to make. And Janice, you had said something like about 7. Because
yeah, 7 years is the line. That's always been, you know, I've been doing it for a long time. It's 7 years. And then yeah, that's like that's the median, you know. So okay. we found out we were in Sundance at 6.5. So I actually felt,
and you won the audience award as well.
At South by Southwest.
South by Southwest, that's right.
Yes,
yeah.
yes, and several other, Minneapolis St. Paul Film Festival, at Milwaukee. We were the closing night doc at AFI docs. Yeah, we got a couple of nice accolades.
That's great. Well, I'm talking to people about the film and about this Q&A tonight, particularly before the election tomorrow. And trying to really, I know, and trying to get them to understand the power of Molly Ivins. Now, I think you were running into this, both of you, where they were saying it's a biopic, and also she died in 2007.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I had been a showrunner. I'd made doc series and a little bit of reality stuff and TV. And I had, pretty good connections. And I thought, oh, well, Molly's a perfect project. And so I went to certain media entities, and several of them came back. Not all of them. They love Molly. How can you not love Molly? But the basic overall was, it's a biopic and she's dead. And that just, freaked me and James out so much because, first of all, a biopic. So this is like, I want to say 2013, 2014. And it was like, really? Obama was in, everybody, there was a certain, I'm going to say it, a little cushiness, like, like everything's going to be great. Clearly we got a whiplash back that things aren't really great. And in 2016, and that's a whole lot, 2018, 2016. 2018 was also another whiplash with 101 freshman congresswomen getting elected. I was kind of blown away by that. And so it made James and I very, very nervous. So I went into a wormhole, and Carlisle can tell you about that as the observer of the wormhole. Because I was editing myself for 5.5 years, and I had, amassing interviews and material, and I kept finding stuff, and I lived in her archives. I would go for periods of time to Texas and stay with Karen. We would go to Austin. She would leave me there. I would stay at somebody's house, and I would spend a week or 2 weeks in the archive and shoot things. And then I thought I had taken, because I would take a picture and I would take a raw file. So, because I wouldn't have to go back, and I would just amass. I would just glance at them. So then it took me about a year just to go through and read everything and catalog it and organize it. And I got very, very spooked about my structure, my initial idea of what I wanted to do because of this biopic thing. It was really interesting, but look, every project has its progression of how you're going to figure it out. And you have to just listen. You have to just listen to yourself. And the one thing I learned from all of that is first thought, best thought. I went back to my first original structure. That's because somebody like in year 6, so the great editor, Kate Amen, said to me, Janice, what's wrong with the biopic? And I looked at her and I said, nothing. And it was just like I unlocked myself out of my own self-imposed tomb. And on a plane flight back to the East Coast, I jotted down bullet points of what I wanted it to now be based on, I had mountains of material I'd been climbing and going through and sifting, editing down to be able to bring in an editor to work with me for the final, make the film. And I got out of the plane and I looked at it and I said, that's really familiar. And I do boards that I put index cards of my structures. And I went back to the first one I had ever done in 2013. And that is the film you see today, except for maybe 3 or 4 more things that I added into it. So first thought, best thought. But yeah, biopic and she's dead. So don't listen to other people. Take it in, process it.
I will say, despite that, what emerged early on for Janice and James and I was that there were several stories. There was Molly's story. There was the story of what she was writing about back then, we are still dealing with. And there was the story of Texas. And Texas, as there's a title of a book written by an American writer, Gail Collins, which is, as Texas goes, so goes the nation. Because, and so Molly could see this, Texas politics. As she liked to say, Texas is a national laboratory for bad government. And so we understood that. So Janice and James and I, as Janice is juggling, like, what is the structure? We still had these 3 stories that we knew were going to be part of the film, that were the major themes of the film.
Yeah, right out the gate, actually, square one, I said the A story is Molly, the B story is Texas, and the C story is the people who are basically affected by the things that happen because of policies that are made, and how it trickles down to we folks, we the people. And, if you in classical story structure, the protagonist is Molly, the antagonist is Texas, but also the protagonist. It's a dual role. And within that is all the rising conflict of what she, you know, her journey, you know? So yeah, we knew that right out the gate. That was the way, that was the trajectory. And that is really what, you know, we went back to.
Initially. You cleared 1,400 archival bits and bobs.
Oh my God, we had a fabulous line producer who I called our clip goddess, our clip archival goddess, Amber Howell. And I mean, Amber, I don't know how she managed to do this and remain at the end of it still had long hair, because it was so intense what she was going through. Once we got into Sundance, I mean, there was so much you had to do legally, like she had to get everything cleared, clips and music. I mean, she was just like, yeah. And we also brought on a fabulous music supervisor who also had to clear the music stuff too. It was intense.
I don't know how you even chose those clips, but I know that if you don't get clearance on one or two things, the whole project stops until you can find a replacement. So that was already impressive. But you've got amazing people.
We did replace. I mean, there were certain things that I did, and I would find something and just put it in really quickly. I've been making docs in particular, a lot of archival stuff, and Amber and I have worked together for over 20 years. She's my co-producer on other stuff. So she is a dog with a bone. But it's amazing because we had literally 5 weeks that she had 1,400 clips. And some we had placed, like it was cleared, but it was able to be shown at Sundance. And then, you know, you do some after the final deals, but we got the okays. But yeah, 1,400 clips it was, and we also have a lot of fair use.
Yeah. Oh, good. You know, one thing about Molly Ivins, and I think that this is the kind of for people that aren't interested, is her sense of humor. It is inescapable. She's likened to Mark Twain, and you know, I think, how did you decide to get that balance? Because it would seem to me as if you've got such an embarrassment of riches of all the clips that she said, all the quotes that she said. And it's hard hitting and it's pertinent, but it's very funny.
So Molly was, her humor was brilliant. She also had stories that she told over and over again. So, and I went through it all. I sifted through all of it. I have a select reel is your stuff you love. So everything, I had a 7-hour select reel of Molly Ivins alone. Just
Molly being funny, Molly being funny.
But thematically based on different things, not only her linear trajectory of her life, but also themes, speaking truth to power, Texas then and now, Molly skewering Democrats, Molly skewering Republicans, Molly skewering it's Bush. You know, I had it all broken down. And then what I would do is I would look for the best delivery. Yeah. But how to deliver a line, because she would use her material over. She appeared on so many different talk shows. Also, what's affordable? You know, what is affordable? What can you claim fair use? I don't let that come into my process in terms of creating, but once I've got the structure, once it's there and I'm in the mode of really almost near a fine cut, and we find that we can't afford something, then I will pull it out and I'll replace it with something else. I'll find a way to re-edit it and put it in. But it's her humor, man. Oh my God. And there on the DVDs, there are bonus materials. And that is stuff that there's so many stories that didn't make it into the film. There's so many funny bits. She has a whole thing that she did about how gays clean up the town. She tells a story how there's this town out in Texas, and they were losing money and they're trying to redevelopment. How are they going to get money? And she wrote it in a column. This old rancher comes up to the microphone at the city council meeting. He's got these big gnarled hands and he rolls his hat and it's at his waist. And he comes up and he says, sir, ma'am, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here and I want to know, how can we get them gays to come here and clean up our town? And it's her, I'm not even doing it. She was hilarious, but it's true. I mean, the gays come, they refurbish the old diner, they refurbish the old movie theater, things start happening again, it becomes a destination. It's very funny.
wish there was an answer for that. I know we've got about 10 minutes left, so I'm just going to open up if anybody wants to ask any questions. Otherwise, I'm very happy to continue with this. Very, very happy. It's the amount of things that she's said, and the not only, as I said, pithy and pertinent and relevant, but also hilarious. And the argument now is that because she's been dead, what, 2007, so it's 13 years. And she's even more relevant now. From the documentary, what elements can you pull out to show us that she was prescient?
Well, let me say this, and then I'll turn it over to Janice. But, you know, the themes that she talked about with Governor Bush, who became President Bush, are so in play right now, which is the outward display of religiosity, anti-intellectualism, and machismo. And those are very much what we're dealing with now with President Trump and a lot of the Trump supporters. And so that's for definitely one of the reasons why what she was writing about then is so relevant now, because this was in Texas, and as it said in the film, it metastasized into the national political scene of these themes of anti-intellectualism, machismo, and an outward display of religiosity.
Yeah, she wrote that in Shrub, which was about when Governor Bush was governor. After the great Ann Richards, her partner, her fellow Texas gal, wildly funny. Yeah, she said when she wrote Shrub in the foreword to Bushwhacked, her next book, which was about his presidency, she said, well, you know, if you had read the first book, I wouldn't have had to write the second book. Molly was prescient, my God. I mean, so much of what she wrote and said is happening right now. If you look back to the early 90s.
Yeah. I mean, she was incredibly well read. I mean, she would read all the time. She was well educated as well, for whatever that means. But it does allow you to have, I think, access to things that maybe other people wouldn't have. But do you think it was her sense of history, or was it her relationship with her father, or what? I mean, why do you think this coalesced? Because she and her sister were very, very different. That happens in families. But I'm just wondering how you create a force like Molly Ivins, because she is unique.
Well, I think definitely she was a voracious reader from an early age, and the mole is in her hole reading her books. She read everything she could find, and she had that kind of a brain. That is who she was. She was on her school newspaper, and she learned early on to speak truth to authority, to stand up for herself, to speak truth to power, because she stood up to General Jim Ivins, her father, all the time. And also, I think coming up with the civil rights movement, it all formed her, you know. But she was a student of history, and Molly knew that history repeats itself, that these things are cyclical, and you stick around long enough, it's going to come back into the consciousness of what's going on, what's playing out, because we haven't learned very much. And also, you know, America's a young country. I mean, America's in UK, you're not so young, but America's a young country, and we're still figuring it out as we have this march towards authoritarianism and fascism. I'm just going to say it, y'all. We haven't had a war on these shores. So there is a disconnect. Molly knew that. And so when she said in the early 90s, you know, it's not a left to right issue. It never has been. It is top to bottom. It always has been. Mm-hmm. It's about, who's getting screwed and who's doing the screwing. And that is throughout history. If you look at it, that is where we're at, isn't it? And she said back in 91, the richest 1% owned 43% of all the world's wealth. That was in 91. Here we are in 2000. The richest 1% own how much? We're moving on, 56, 63%? I mean, it's escalating. And, so she would point out these things that are apparent, the deregulation. I mean, that started back in, Reagan, the deregulation.
Did you say that they stopped teaching civics now in school?
Yeah. I mean, private schools, they do, but I had a great public education. Carlisle and I mean, Carlisle went to a private school in Texas, and Texas is known for their weak public education system. Early on, LA has become that, but I grew up in New York, and post World War II in the 60s, my parents moved to where they moved because it was the #1 school district. Post World War II, America was really, there was something to be said, but it didn't last very long. And people have been living in a bubble and a dream. That bubble of make America great again, come on now. What, do we want to go back to the 50s? I don't think so. The 50s were not great. They were for a few people.
Great for some people, yes, I was just going to say.
A few people. So chickens are coming home to roost, but I'm just going to say this to y'all. It's not just about our election tomorrow. It's a global situation. Fascism is on the rise globally. And it's because we have a shared humanity. We're one species, people. We're humans. We're one species. Stop the tribalism.
Well, do we need a new Molly Ivins? Is there anybody that's following her footsteps that you're aware of? I mean, I'm not. I don't know somebody that writes like her.
Yes, we need a new Molly Ivins. It'd be fabulous to have one person do what Molly did. But as you know, Molly was one person doing what she did. The people we have now, Rachel Maddow, Stephen Colbert, John Oliver, Trevor Noah. Rachel Maddow's a newscaster, but the other three, Samantha Bee, they're comedians and they have writers' rooms writing their material. And they have definitely a point of view, but it's different. They are not journalists. They're not columnists. So we would love that.
I think, when you look on the front lines of all these protests and you see all the young people coming up, and people have asked me this, who's the next Molly Ivins? All of them. All of them. Taking civic responsibility and doing what they can. But the other thing that people need to do is they need to pull out of their vortex of these things, because we are getting a lot of misinformation, as you can know, because there's several documentaries now. Docs are on the rise because it is a way to find out really a lot of truth. But you have to take civic responsibility, and you got to stop just reading the byline, and you got to dig deep. You got to do some really deep digging to find out the facts, which is the truth.
And you also talked about meeting to engage rather than to disagree, which is becoming more and more impossible in this polarized world. But also you were saying that Molly Ivins was built for social media. I mean, if she was here now.
She was Twitter ready in the 80s. She said, I'm not anti-gun, I'm pro-knife. That was her a column. That was like a tag in a column. And the whole column is about, at the time, it seems, God, Carlisle, it just seems rather poetic that it was about concealed carry as opposed to open carry. Got armed up and ready to, we don't want to take your guns, people. We just want sensible gun laws. She wrote, I'm not anti-gun, I'm pro-knife. And then she wrote about the merits of the knife. You'd get exercise. You had to, obviously you can't say that in what's going on with France right now. Everybody's very sensitive. Mm-hmm. But the point was, at the end of the column, if you read the column, she says, God damn it, get a dog. You want protection? Get a dog.
So in a parting shot, if you haven't seen this documentary, or if you want to engage someone to see it, what would you think? What's the biggest selling line that we have for this? Because I'm already over the moon and in love with this documentary and think everybody should see it.
I like to say, how many documentaries make you laugh?
That's true.
This will make you laugh. It'll also make you cry because you miss her so damn much. And then it'll make you get busy, to take responsibility, to get in there and, have a good time. And while you're fighting for freedom, car, take it away. What did Molly say?
She'd say, have a good time while you're fighting for freedom. It might be the only fun you ever have, and it's a better way to live.
And who is driving the bus? There's a wonderful
Molly.
Molly's driving this bus. There's no doubt. So many signs. She said she lobbed so many signs that she's driving this bus, including the fact that the film was released nationwide in America, actually out of first through the great state of Texas, on her 75th birthday. And they did not know that, Magnolia. I like looked at that day and I said, well, oh my God, it's her birthday. Come on, she's driving this bus. The fact that we still have legs and we just opened in the UK, y'all, and that, I mean, I don't know any other doc that has that kind of staying power other than RBG. And why? Strong women with something to say that you need to listen to and take in.
And we're not going to stop. Anyway, I want to thank you, Carlisle Vanerdervoort and Janice Engel, the creators of the wonderful Life and Times of Molly Ivins.
Raise hell, y'all.
Raise hell. There you go. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And pray for a good outcome for our election. Oh my God.